We're going to look at our last form of conversions. This time we're going to take fractions and we're going to make them into percents. You have to keep in mind that percent means out of 100. And you can use that little percent symbol just as a way to remind you that you can write a fraction with a common denominator of 100. For example, instead of saying 8 out of every 100 professional basketball players are female, we can say 8% of basketball players are female. To write the fraction as a percent, you are first going to write a proportion. We're going to take this number 9 over 20 and write it as a percent. So the first ratio in our proportion is right here, which is 9/20ths. And we want to find an equivalent fraction that has a denominator of 100. So to do that, I have to think about what happens to 20 so that I can get 100. Well, I have to multiply 20 times 5, which then means I have to do the same thing to my numerator. So 9 times 5 would be 45. So 9 over 20 is equal to 45 over 100, which then is 45%. Remember, if it's out of 100, we can easily write it as a percent. Sometimes you're going to have fractions that aren't pretty, meaning there's ugly math involved. If we think of the fraction 7/8, there's not an easy number I can multiply 8 by in order to get 100. It's going to be some crazy long decimal. You're going to have to remember that. It's not going to be very pretty. So when this occurs, what we can do is we can first convert to a decimal. So that's going to be my first step. I'm going to convert it to a decimal. So to do that, remember we set it up as a division problem. This says 7 divided by 8. So that means I'm going to have 7 divided by 8. 7 is smaller, so I need that decimal and 0 that we've been talking about. 70 divided by 8, well, that's going to be 8. 8 times 8 is 64. Subtract and I have 6. Add a 0, bring that down. 60 divided by 8 would be 7. 7 times 8 is 56. Subtract and we have 4. Add a decimal, bring it down. 40 divided by 8 is 5. 5 times 8 is 40. Subtract and bring it down. So I know as a decimal, I get 0.875. So now, once I have it as a decimal, I can easily convert to a percent. We did that by using that Dr. Pepper method. We're going from a decimal to a percent, so I'm going to move 2 times to the right. Put my decimal, swoop it over 2 times, and we end up with 87.5% as our answer. So it's going to be 2 steps when it's not pretty. 5/6 on the other hand is going to be the same thing. 5 divided by 6. There's nothing I can multiply by 6 except for some crazy decimal to get to 100. So this is not pretty math. So now I'm going to revert to my long division method. So it's going to be 5 divided by 6. Add a decimal and a 0 and bring this up. 50 divided by 6 is going to be 8. 8 times 6 is 48. Subtract and I have 2. So I'm going to add a decimal and bring this down. Let's see, 20 divided by 6 would be 3. 3 times 6 is 18. Subtract and I have 20. 20 divided by 6 would be 3. I think we've discovered a pattern. This 3 is going to repeat. It's going to go on and on and on forever. So I know I've got this 0.833, and I'm going to keep it at 2 decimals. At 3 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, because I know I'm going to be using my Dr. Pepper, and I'm going to have to move 2 spaces over. So I'm going to need that number at the end. Once you have found that there's a pattern, we can stop, and we can use this as our repetent. So I'm going to slide this over 1, 2 times. I have 83.3 repeating % as my answer.